Hey folks, this is Gene from Regular Guy Mountain Biking, and in this video, my buddy Jeff from SRAM and I will be installing the new SRAM Dub crank and bottom bracket kit, and explain to you what it's all about and how it can help you and upgrade your bicycle. Alright folks, hey, once again, this is Gene from Regular Guy Mountain Biking, and in today's video, I've got my buddy Jeff here from SRAM.
Hey guys.
Hey, you've seen Jeff in a bunch of other videos, and today, in this video, he was kind enough to hook up the old Regular Guy Mountain Biker over here with the SRAM Dub. This is the crank set, right?
Yep,
and the bottom bracket and the whole thing?
Correct.
You're going to learn all about that in this video. So what we're going to do is just kind of send it over to Jeff quick and have him explain to us what this new product is from SRAM, how it's going to help you, the rider, and why you would want to upgrade or change your cranks over to this.
Absolutely. So we came out with the Dub, which is the durable unified bottom bracket. A few months ago we launched the product, and really it was to allow us to consolidate the amount of spindles that we offered for our crank sets. And previously to Dub we had a GXP spindle, we also had a BB30 spindle.
Right.
The BB30 fit subsequently on press fit bottom brackets and some other frames. GXP fit on some smaller bearing press fit frames, like specifically Trek had a smaller diameter bearing.
Gotcha.
And that would use an adapter with a GXP crank. So things were
It's complicated.
a little confusing.
Bottom brackets and headsets are still complicated for me, folks. It's hard to know what to buy and what to do. It's just simply complicated.
Yep. So what we did, we consolidated down to one spindle diameter, and unfortunately it's not 100% backwards compatible. There are a handful of bikes out there that have, again, this smaller diameter bearing that we're not going to be able to accommodate, and those bikes are becoming more and more obsolete as we go on. But most any threaded or press fit 30, BB30, and a handful of other interfaces will be able to accommodate this. In doing so, we've also increased that diameter over our previous GXP iteration. It's a little bit smaller diameter than the old BB30 setup, so you could use it in both shell sizes. We've reduced some weight and just made everything a lot simpler for the shop side of things, or user side of things.
So the goal here would be that it's simpler to use on different bikes, right?
Correct.
You have a better chance of getting the right one.
Correct.
I mean, we still recommend talking to your bike shop if you're just not sure. I'm not trying to, be Mr. Bike Shop plugger over here, but if you don't know, you should talk to somebody.
Absolutely.
All right? Don't just keep buying things and returning everything. But this should help make things a little easier to upgrade.
Correct.
Upgrade.
Now,
let's talk about that. Yeah.
I don't really see there's a necessity to go out and upgrade to Dub right off the bat.
That's what I'm curious about.
Unless, maybe your crank is beat up and in disrepair, your bottom bracket shot. At that point, maybe you want to invest and just go with Dub, and you'll be future-proofed at that point. So you can transfer that product onto whatever frame you get next.
But if your cranks are working, it might not be a reason to unless they're beat to hell and you're looking to upgrade them. Then the Dub system might be an option to go with, something to look into. It'd probably be a very good one.
I mean, compared to, say, the Dub version of this GX Eagle crank compared to your GXP, it's going to weigh a little less.
Gotcha.
So there's, slight benefit there. It's going to be a little stiffer because the spindle is larger in diameter.
Okay.
So there's definitely some benefits, but not, huge.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do next. We're going to install this. Well, actually, I'm going to hold the camera, and Jeff's going to install it because we want it to come out right. So in order to install the new Dub system, we needed to take some things off my existing bike, of course. So we took the pedals off, the existing cranks and bottom bracket. Obviously, we had to take the chain off and things like that. Basically, just break down the bike so that we could install the new Dub system.
So I pulled the other bottom bracket out, the GXP version, and I'm going to get the Dub bottom bracket situated. And you'll notice when you purchase this, there's two little 2.5 millimeter spacers. On a modern bicycle or modern mountain bike, your bottom bracket shell's 73 millimeters. It's just threads right in. I always apply a little anti-seize to the thread so there's no galling or galvanization. On a narrower width bottom bracket shell, a 68 millimeter, you would have to put one of these guys on each side. So bottom bracket just goes straight in with a little grease, or I use anti-seize personally.
So just like Jeff said, he applied some anti-seize to the bottom bracket and then basically just slid that right into the frame and just screwed that right in. Really, quite easy. When Jeff did finally tighten the bottom bracket in place, we used a torque wrench and he set it to 50 Newton meters.
So you guys saw me remove the GXP bottom bracket. I was using this Park Tool bottom bracket tool. Dub has a different size outer cup, so you're going to need to use a Dub compatible. This one happens to be made by Abbey Tools, which is quite a beautiful tool if you're into tools. Otherwise, there's various bottom bracket tools from other manufacturers available for sure.
We did have to take off the bash guard to tighten up the bottom bracket, and we also had to take apart a little bit of the linkage of the bike just to get that tool in place to tighten it up. That might not be the case with your bike, but I have a Santa Cruz Nomad 4, and in order to put the tool on the bottom bracket cups to tighten them up, we did have to again take the bash guard off, and we had to remove the linkage bolt so we could remove the swing arm in the back. Then we just simply put everything back together again. Not a big deal, but I just want to make you aware of that. With the bottom bracket in place, it was time to slide in the actual cranks. Piece of cake, they just slid right in, and we started getting ready to put everything back together.
So in addition to those two spacers I mentioned that there are available for the bottom bracket depending on your shell width, there's also two other spacers for the spindle. And depending on the bike's configuration, you're going to need a different combination of these. This particular setup only requires the 4.5 millimeter. What you need to do is go to SRAM.com and go to our technical support section and figure out there's a easy PDF chart that shows you which configurations you need, and that's how you figure it out. I was discussing that we needed the 4.5 millimeter spacer on the drive side. Turns out because we're running a chain guide, the spacing's a little different, and I had to pull up the manual that I suggested you guys take a peek at, and it's telling me that I need a 2.5 millimeter spacer behind the bottom bracket cup, and then a 2 millimeter spacer on the spindle. That's going to push everything out so that we don't have interference with this chain guide. So now we're going to try the install. The chain guide's back on. We've got the 2.5 millimeter spacer behind the bottom bracket cup, and the PDF is calling for a 2 millimeter spacer on the spindle, which goes right there. And now the crank should fit right on and tighten up.
Once we read that guide and figured out what spacers were required, putting everything together went quite smooth.
So another thing to point out here, the new Dub crank has this adjuster. And those of you who have run our BB30 crank before are familiar with this. Those who are coming from GXP, this is going to be something new. And what you do is there's an arrow. You're going to tension this until it gives you a little resistance. Then you get your trusty 2 millimeter hex wrench, and you're going to tighten the pinch collar. And now your bearings are properly preloaded, and your crank is adjusted right. So we got the crank on. One thing I want to point out is through a few bits of trial and error, we had to change the spacing of the chain guide, which happened to be initially the chainring was bottoming out, so we had to take spacers out and bring it closer to the frame. We still have clearance here. That's all buttoned up. We've torqued the bottom bracket to 50 Newton meters. We've torqued the crank here to 54 Newton meters, both of which are labeled on the crank and bottom bracket. We put the torque settings there. But again, do yourself a favor and consult the SRAM technical document so you have the spacers situated. On this particular bike, it was 0 bottom bracket spacers and 1 4.5 millimeter spacer on the drive side spindle. And this is a wrap. The crank is on here, ready to roll.
All right, folks, that's going to wrap things up for today. Hopefully you got to see the entire install. You learned some things about the install and some things you need to know about, like things about spacing and stuff like that. Make sure I'll have a link in the description of the page you said to go to, Jeff. right, for the referencing information about spacing. So this was provided to me by SRAM, okay, so no fooling around, okay. I was very fortunate to be working with some really great people, and if you want to learn more about this, I'll be at Mountain Creek quite often. This bike will be there. If you want to check this thing out, if you want to ask me any questions, I'm really happy to answer these questions, and I welcome them. If you want to learn more about anything on this bike, I'll be at Mountain Creek, the slow guy, you know, usually the guy being afraid to go down the hill. All right? So, hey, man, thank you so much,
Pleasure.
Jeff.
Thank you so much.
If you want any more information, put the comments down below. We'll get back to you on those things. Like this video, subscribe, and as always, my friends, keep the party on the pedals. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Peace.
Bye-bye.